Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom. I'm the creator of rulingplanets.com and Christopher Renstrom Astrology. And this time, I wanted to talk to you about 3 major retrograde planets returning to the zodiac signs that they just left. Saturn returned to Pisces on September 1st, Neptune returns to Pisces on October 22nd, and Uranus returns to Taurus on November 7th. Now, all planets, with the exception of the Sun and Moon, turn retrograde. Mercury turns retrograde 3 times a year, while the outer planets, like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, turn retrograde once a year. In fact, the outer planets spend about half the year in retrograde, so it's always hard to tell the difference between when they're moving forward or when they're moving backward. That's why Uranus always feels like it's causing revolution and change, while Neptune is always the planet of yearning for things that you cannot have, and Pluto always seems intent on bringing about ordeals and the transformations that arise from them. It's hard to tell when they're direct or when they're backwards. It's hard to tell when they're on or when they're off. Now, the reason why Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto spend half the year in retrograde or half the year out of retrograde is because they are so far away from the sun. Uranus is so far away that it takes 7 years to go through just one zodiac sign. Neptune is so far away that it takes anywhere from 13 to 14 years to go through one zodiac sign. And Pluto, because of its elliptical orbit, can take anywhere from 12 to 32 years going through one zodiac sign. Now, because of the length of time that it takes an outer planet to move through a sign, it will move forward a few degrees, stop, turn retrograde, and move back a few degrees, only to stop, come out of retrograde, and move forward just a few more degrees. This going forward and going backward over the same degrees over and over again is kind of like, imagine taking a magic marker and drawing a line on a piece of paper, and then going back over the line you drew on the piece of paper, and then going back and forth with a heavy hand with that magic marker on that piece of paper until it begins to saturate the paper and maybe even rip it. This is what it can feel like when you have a modern planet turning forward and then retrograde and then forward and then retrograde again over the same degrees. It's basically making a statement, and it's trying to get us to figure out what that statement is. And if you happen to have your sun, your moon, or your rising sign in the last few degrees of Pisces or the first few degrees of Aries, you would have felt that energy very, very powerfully. Now, this year, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus entered into the zodiac signs of Aries and Gemini, respectively. And so there was a lot of fire and air energy that was going through everyone's horoscopes. And this would have been wonderful for people born under a fire or an air sign. This kind of yang energy or masculine energy, which was going through everyone's horoscopes, is a very active type of energy. It's very initiative-oriented, it speeds things up, and it always wants to be in motion. And that's because air and fire are complementary energies. And even in the zodiac sign, it's the air and fire signs that sextile one another. Together, the elements of air and fire heat, lift, and propel. Modern windmills, for instance, are machines that convert the kinetic energy of wind into mechanical power to spin a generator, producing clean, renewable electricity for homes and businesses. Solar panels are designed to absorb the sun's rays as a source of energy for generating electricity or heating. So this example of air, the windmills, and fire, solar panels, I wanted to share with you to sort of give you the idea of what these two energies do together. So where earth and water, for instance, which are two elements that complement one another, and they rule zodiac signs that sextile one another, when you bring earth and water together, you have the idea of growth. But when you bring air and fire together, you have the idea of powering things. Air and fire are active and activating. They want to keep moving forward, and they have a big problem with sitting still. Now, all of that kinetic energetic energy that I was talking about will be thrown into reverse as Saturn and Neptune leave the zodiac sign of Aries and return to the zodiac sign of Pisces, followed by Uranus leaving the zodiac sign of Gemini and returning to the zodiac sign of Taurus. So what are the benefits of a retrograde? That's a good question, because retrogrades are often seen as being problematic. That's because when the planet reverses direction, its energy becomes the opposite of what it was before. So it's during a retrograde that we feel like our progress is being inhibited, or we're being dragged back into a situation that we just left, or we're being made to repeat something like, I don't know, repeating the third grade because you weren't ready to go on to the fourth grade. So retrogrades are seen as being counter-progressive. They're seen pretty much as being backward. So what are the benefits of a retrograde? Well, it's during a retrograde that you travel back over the ground that you just traversed. This allows you to discover something that you might have overlooked the first time, or to reconnect with something that you left behind. So we want to ask ourselves, what does Saturn retrograding back down into the zodiac sign of Pisces do? And again, our first response might be like, make things dreary or make things depressing. I mean, for many people, Saturn in Pisces for the last 2.5 years was a real downer. It was a real spoiler. It inhibited energy. It made people feel heavy and maybe even depressed and very isolated and very alone. So what could possibly be the benefit of going back to that, one might ask? Well, what Saturn teaches by returning back to the zodiac sign of Pisces is emotional responsibility. In other words, where sometimes we can be very expressive with our emotions and we can be very dominating or domineering with our emotions, or sometimes we lead with our hurt feelings or we avoid situations where we don't want to be upset or distressed. Saturn teaches us to take responsibilities for what our own emotional life is. Is something we're saying going to hurt someone? Is something that we're withholding going to hurt someone? Is being heavy and immovable something that causes difficulty to other people? Saturn in Pisces just doesn't generate this effect or influence in a horoscope. Saturn in Pisces would have brought some kind of emotional consciousness, some sort of emotional awareness. It might have been negative at first and difficult and problematic at first, but the longer that we stayed in that emotional state, the more that we began to really understand that being in charge of our own emotional life is very important, that we're not going to be as disappointed or if we're not going to be as hurt if we're always pinning our hopes on someone else coming through or being there. Now, admittedly, that's a real tough lesson to learn, but nevertheless, it's an important lesson to learn and one that can be learned when Saturn is moving through the zodiac sign of Pisces. So Saturn's return to the zodiac sign of Pisces is really asking the question, did you learn this? Do you understand this? Do you appreciate the benefit of this in your life right now? So, what does Neptune retrograding back down into the zodiac sign of Pisces do? Well, for many people, especially if you were born under Pisces or Virgo or Gemini or Sagittarius, since 2012, Neptune in Pisces has made you feel very at sea, that you weren't really clear or focused on the things that you wanted, that in many ways you felt like you might have been involved in an undercurrent, something that was dragging you down. You know, instead of feeling like you were floating or swimming or moving through your life, you might have felt very much lost at sea, that you didn't know what direction you were going in, whether it was north or south or east or west. And everything might have just been too emotional, too overwhelming for you. And so there might have been certain signs that really delighted in Neptune leaving the zodiac sign of Pisces. Signs like the air signs or the fire signs might have been very happy to have gotten out of Neptune and Pisces. It's kind of like a cat being thrown into a swimming pool, and the first thing it wants to do is scramble out of that swimming pool. So what's the benefit of Neptune returning to Pisces? The benefit of Neptune returning to Pisces is an empathy, is a compassion, is a feeling, especially for people that you don't know in your life. Now, with friends or with lovers or with family members, we can feel these very strong bonds. We can feel like these people are a member of our tribe, that they really get where we're coming from and we really get where they're coming from. And so ties can bind us. They can be, as I said, familial ties, but they might also be national ties or economic ties or even cultural ties. You know, the sameness of looking at someone and saying, okay, this person believes in the same things that I believe in. This person acts in a way that's very similar to me. I like being around this person because I feel very comfortable and like I get this person and that this person gets me. So it's easy to generate empathy and sympathy in those situations. But Neptune is a modern planet, meaning that Neptune is going to make you look outside of your own personal perspective. And Neptune is going to challenge you to exhibit and to feel and to welcome feelings of empathy and sympathy for people who don't agree with you, people who weren't raised in your same culture or economic bracket or with your own particular spiritual beliefs. Can you extend that empathy to people that you don't agree with? Can you extend that empathy to people that you may never meet? This is the question of Neptune, and this is how Neptune acts upon all of us, just like an ocean shapes a shoreline. So with Neptune returning to the zodiac sign of Pisces, you're going to be revisiting this idea of empathy and sympathy. How well did you do, in your empathy and sympathy towards other people? With Neptune returning to Pisces, you're going to kind of find out, and you may be revisiting some of these issues that you were more intent on being past than on really absorbing and understanding on a very deep and profound level. And finally, Uranus and Taurus. What did Uranus and Taurus teach us? Well, people born under Taurus might say, not much, or missing what a good night's sleep was like, because I hadn't had a good night's sleep since 2018 when Uranus entered my zodiac sign. Okay, that might be something that people born under the zodiac sign of Taurus might say. What could possibly have been constructive or positive about Uranus going through Taurus? Taurus is a zodiac sign of stability and security. It's a zodiac sign that's very much associated with finances and with money. And with Uranus having gone through Taurus from 2018 until just this year, there have been upsets in finances or the understanding of money or the way that money is used or the way that money is spent. And this is something that might have been very disruptive and very upsetting. The things that you thought were secure and stable were suddenly flipped upside down or inside out. What could possibly be a lesson worth learning about that? I think a big lesson that we all learned is that long-standing structures can be changed. Now, we're all used to the idea of okay, life is about change, embrace it, and some of us are better at embracing those changes than others. But if you look past over the last 8 years and you think of all the revolutionary changes that have taken place, you can see that things that were deemed as being non-changeable, this is the way that things are going to be, were turned upside down and inside out. And for some of us, that might have been very distressing and very upsetting. We might have been like, I want things to go back to what they were before. I want things to be secure. I want things to be stable. I want things to be safe. This is crazy. But for others of us, we might have recognized that in the change was the idea of, what? I don't have to accept this as being a rule in my life or a law in my life or the way that things are going to be done. There might have been a realization with Uranus going through Taurus that things can be changed, that those things that we are told will last forever, that you can never change, you can never question, do fall apart, can be changed, can be flipped upside down and turned inside out. So what this brings is this idea that you don't have to accept a fixed truth or a fixed reality, that you can change it. Now, for some people recently, those changes might have been disastrous, but for other people, it might have been a feeling of, this is really great. And so that, again, isn't something that's going to be consistent or fixed or static. So with Uranus moving back into the zodiac sign of Taurus comes an understanding that change actually can be good, that not just one part of the conversation gets to change things, the other part of the conversation can change things too. And there can be more than change than just changing things back. There can be building again, starting over, finding yourself in a different place with a different perspective. And so these changes can actually be very inventive and they can be very innovative. As Thomas Jefferson was saying about the Constitution as it was being stitched together, a Constitution can't be a fixed body of rules and laws that never changes. That's why people introduced amendments to the US Constitution. It was to change it, because at some point you outgrow the shirt that you're wearing. You know, if you think of trying to squeeze back into a shirt that you wore when you were 8 years old, that's laughable. Okay, there's no way that you could possibly do that. And that can also go for rules or laws or economies or the way that people should be. You can't squeeze back into something that has been outgrown, which means you have to look forward and you have to look at the next idea. You don't change things back, you use change to move forward. And of course, you measure that change and the impact that it's taking. Now, that might sound a little bit like larger than life to you, but that takes place all the time in our regular lives, in our regular day-to-day lives, where we maybe long to put the genie back in the bottle again, or take back those 3 wishes. But those wishes have been made. The genie is out of the bottle, and you have to deal with active change and developments that are already in motion. And so with Uranus returning back to the zodiac sign of Taurus, this allows you to sort of look at things a little bit differently. Maybe the focus earlier this year was like, I can't wait for Uranus to be out of Taurus and I can get back to stability in my life, you know. And with Uranus moving back down into Taurus again, you might be able to appreciate some of the changes that took place and how some of them might need a little bit more encouragement or a little bit more of you putting your shoulder to the wheel to really make the things happen in your life that you would like to see happen. So if you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, Saturn returning to Pisces, followed by Neptune returning to Pisces, is going to be very complex for you. The first reason why it's going to be complex is that you're just getting used to Saturn and Neptune being in your own zodiac sign, all right? So now that they're in your own sign, you've been experiencing that increase in heaviness, responsibility, and obligations that Saturn can bring. And then you can also be experiencing that sort of mythologizing that Neptune can bring by being in your sign. And so how would this show up for you with Saturn and Neptune being in your own zodiac sign? Well, you may have been dealing with a lot of ideas what it's like for you to be strong and for you to be in charge of your life. And you might have felt that you were very much burdened by responsibilities or tasks or obligations that were getting in the way of you being you. And you might have begun to kind of resent it or wonder how long that this was going to last. And then with that Neptune there, you might have felt like, okay, what I have to do is just tough it out. That's an Aries message. It's just, I have to tough it out. And I'm not even going to think about this. I'm going to, put my shoulder to the wheel and my nose to the grindstone, and I'm going to power through whatever obstacles or difficulties that I'm going through, whatever responsibilities that I'm in charge of, whatever obligations I have to honor and fulfill. Now, with both Saturn and Neptune moving into Pisces, Saturn moved into Pisces on September 1st, and Neptune returns to Pisces on October 22nd, you're going to have this feeling of weakness again surging up inside of you, okay? Aries is all about being strong and being very, very powerful. And Pisces is all about sort of being weak. Okay, now that's not to say that Pisces is a weak sign. It's not weak at all. But Pisces has a lot of soft spaces in its zodiac sign. It's full of empathy and compassion and a deep feeling for other people. Pisces understands what it's like to struggle. Pisces understands what it's like to suffer and to go through pain. And so that's something that's natural to Pisces. Now, is that something that people born under Pisces go out and look for? No, not really, but it's something that they're very attuned to. It's something that they understand, just like Aries understands having to be the strong one or having to be the tough one or having to power through something when everyone says, we can't go any further. Aries has to be the one who says, we've got to keep going further and let's go at it. So with Saturn and Neptune being back in the zodiac sign of Pisces, what they're going to bring up in you is those feelings of vulnerability. They may also bring up a feeling of being hopeless or helpless. These are characteristics that can be brought up when these two planets are traveling through the zodiac sign of Pisces. Now, as an Aries, you don't do helpless, and as an Aries, you don't do hopeless. And so this is something that you're going to struggle with. This might show up as maybe a depressed energy in your horoscope, where you're feeling more melancholic or emotionally troubled. This might show up in some way as maybe some kind of incapacitation. Maybe there's an injury or you're dealing with a long illness or something that's gotten in the way of your natural progress. What Saturn and Neptune are doing is that they're putting you back in the waters of vulnerability. They're putting you back into the waters of Pisces. And they're asking you, how empathetic are you? How sympathetic are you to other people? Now, you might be like, I don't have time for pain, or I don't have time for being sympathetic and empathetic. I believe in winners, not whiners, that sort of Aries stuff. And Aries isn't unfeeling. It just believes that if you give in to something that isn't strong and forward moving, that you're going to be lost, that you're going to sink. And so this is why Aries battles with these feelings so much. Aries is a zodiac sign that's quite likely to say, I don't do depression, or I don't do moodiness, or I don't do feeling sorry for myself. It's just they don't because they don't want to, and they don't want to experience, or you don't want to experience those feelings. But sometimes when you're being asked to be empathetic towards someone else, that's not a sign of weakness. That's not a sign of being soft. All right. And again, as I said, having just had Saturn and Neptune in your sign, you might not be feeling especially empathetic towards people who've made their own beds and now have to sleep in them. In other words, you might not be feeling very sympathetic or empathetic towards people who've been self-sabotaging or unwilling to do for themselves, or always in a kind of victim position or something along those lines. Saturn and Neptune in Pisces are going to sort of get you to face the prejudices, or the biases at least, that you may have around weakness and suffering. We all have visceral reactions to other people's pain. Sometimes we see someone in pain and we run towards that person. We want to comfort that person. We want to make things better. And sometimes we run away from that person because we don't want to be near the pain, or we say that that person's not hurting or can't be hurt, or they're less than human or something along those lines. And it's a way of disassociating or distancing yourself from pain. So with this revisit of Saturn and Neptune to Pisces, it's getting you to understand pain that you may feel in your life. Maybe it's physical pain that you're ignoring or trying to power through, or maybe it's emotional pain that you're afraid is going to bring you down. And so you project it onto other people and you tell them to buck up, when maybe in reality, you're really telling yourself to buck up. And maybe telling yourself to buck up isn't the place that you want to be right now. In any case, this return to Pisces, Saturn and Neptune to Pisces, will be forming a sextile to Uranus returning to Taurus during this period of time, which lasts until about maybe late January, early February of next year. During this period of time, you might want to ask yourself, what's wrong with feeling hurt? What's wrong with feeling sad? What's so abysmal about that? Is sadness or hurtness a sign of weakness? And why is that a sign of weakness when it may just be your reality? So if these are things that you're struggling with within yourself, my advice might be to sort of just let it be, to let yourself feel those things. You may feel really bad for a period of time, but you're not going to be rendered immobile or anything along those lines. And that's because we don't really just stay at the bottom of the pit when we're going through these sort of planetary transitions. But I think on a deeper level, what the planets are asking you to do is to be honest with yourself about the things that make you feel hopeless or helpless, and to be more accepting of them. Not only will that make you a more empathetic and sympathetic person to the people in your life, but more importantly, it's going to make you a more sympathetic and empathetic person to yourself. And that where you can give yourself that kind of wonderful, emotional, and loving support, which doesn't just have to be, give me another 25 push-ups or power through this obstacle, where it allows you to be on your own side during the times where it counts, during the times when you're feeling bad or when you're feeling sad. The antidote to that isn't always powering through or getting tougher. The antidote to that is often being consoling and comforting and supportive. If you're born into the zodiac sign of Taurus, or you have Taurus rising, this return of Saturn and Neptune to Pisces, followed by Uranus returning to the zodiac sign of Taurus, your zodiac sign, is actually going to be really good. Now, at first, you were taken by surprise by Uranus, the planet of revolution and change, going through your zodiac sign, and it was there for 7 years, from 2018 until 2025. And probably a lot of your focus was on, how do I get through all of this in one piece? How do I survive these calamities, these unexpected reversals, these surprise twists, keeping my sanity intact, all right? And so that was probably your main focus, which was just to get through, to endure Uranus going through your zodiac sign for 7 years. And when Uranus left your zodiac sign last July, you were happy to see it go. You were probably like, don't let the door hit you on the way out, Uranus. But now that Uranus will be returning to your own zodiac sign, and that will be on November 7th, so you've got some time to prepare here, Saturn and Neptune are kind of going back and laying the groundwork. Saturn and Neptune in the zodiac sign of Pisces is more reflective in its nature. It's more kind of like, well, were things really all that bad? And there might be part of you that might say, yeah, they were, and I don't feel like, revisiting it. But Saturn and Neptune are more inclined to be like, well, why don't we revisit it? Why don't we go and take another look at what we just got through? Yes, maybe it was about endurance. Maybe it was about survival. Maybe it was about holding your life together when it felt like it was constantly falling apart. But you did more than just endure. You did more than just persevere. And what you may come to realize is that you learned a lot of things from this experience. Now that you're on the other side of, that you can sort of understand on a deeper level than you understood before. Again, we're all used to the idea that change is a part of life. There are even some people who say change or die or something along those lines. And that's not something that all people born under Taurus or have Taurus rising ascribe to. They're kind of like, don't just change for change's sake. There is such a thing as things working. There is such a thing as consistency. But as Neptune and Saturn make their way back into Pisces, setting the stage for Uranus to come and join them in November, which will then set up a sextile energy between those two signs, this returning to what life was like before, in an ability to sort of look at it, all right, is going to allow you to make use of insights and make use of perspectives and opportunities that you didn't quite see before because you were at the time in the thick of it. And this is the beauty of the sextile energy when it works with Uranus. Uranus by itself is the planet of revolution and change. And when it goes through your zodiac sign, that's what it does. It knocks over the game board and it sends all the pieces flying. When Uranus forms a sextile to planets like Saturn and Neptune in a zodiac sign like Pisces, it goes from change to development. This isn't just change for change's sake. This is unfolding developments. These are things that are leading to something bigger, that are leading to something better. And of course, with Uranus being back in the zodiac sign of Taurus, and Taurus is an earth sign, you're going to not only realize that you learned a lot of things and that you experienced a lot of things, but earth signs always want to know, how do I take my experience or knowledge and apply it to something that I'm doing now? So this isn't just a story of like, I survived Uranus in my sign. This is a story of like, I learned some things that weren't easy to learn at first, but now reflecting and going back and looking at it from a position of returning to rather than going through, I can see how I could use these opportunities. I have different insights. I have fresh perspectives. And moreover, I have tools, I have skills, I have ways that I can take this knowledge and apply it to my life. And finally, what Saturn and Neptune bring by returning to the zodiac sign of Pisces is imagination. Pisces is the zodiac sign of imagining things differently. A big word that we often use with Pisces is fantasizing. And until recently, fantasizing was sort of used in a derogatory sense, like, oh, you're living in your dream world, or you're fantasizing this or that, and do something practical with your life. But when we fantasize, when we dream, when we live in our dream world, when we work with wishes and their fulfillment, that gets our imagination going. We can see life differently from the way that life looks in front of us today. So it's not just yearning for something different or longing for something different, which is Neptune on its own in Pisces. You combine that with Uranus and Taurus, and you could have longing for something different, yearning for something different, and being able to do something about it. And this is something you can look forward to during this period of time that these planets will be retrograde in these signs from now until the end of January and beginning February. If you're born under Gemini or you have Gemini rising, this period of time when Saturn and Neptune are returning to Pisces and Uranus is returning to Taurus, this is going to be a very challenging period of time for you. And that's because the recent influx of air and fire energy into your horoscope has been very exhilarating for you. It's been full of changes. It's been full of forward motion. You're looking at a whole different set of choices now than you had at the beginning of the year. In fact, during late spring and into the summer, there were all sorts of new choices and options that were showing up from out of nowhere. And these are really wonderful, and they're very stimulating, and they're certainly very, very exciting. And with this sort of push forward that you're getting from the stars, this recent influx of air and fire energy, it might also have led you to perhaps act too heatedly, or too quickly, or even maybe too recklessly. Now, it's not easy going from Saturn and Neptune having been in Pisces. That means that they were in a zodiac sign that squared you, and that would have been a zodiac sign that was dampening your energy and clouding your clear thinking. Suddenly, last spring and over the summer, Saturn and Neptune went from squaring you to supporting you. They entered into the zodiac sign of Aries, and Aries is a fire sign. You're an air sign, and that's a sextile energy that I'm describing. So when you put air and fire together, that's an accelerant, that all of a sudden you went from being inhibited and feeling a bit woozy-headed to suddenly exhilarated and excited, and things were going your way. So Saturn and Neptune went from inhibiting you to actually egging you on. You went from riding the brake to pushing the accelerator. And this might be a time right now when you're asking yourself, did I maybe go too far? Or did I grow too fast? Did I sort of go beyond what I felt comfortable doing or agreeing to at the outset of this change in energies? And you might even find yourself these days, with Saturn definitely having returned to Pisces and Neptune will be joining it in October, you might even find yourself these days kind of missing the restrictions that had been removed, because those restrictions might have afforded you some kind of security, or they might have been some kind of guidelines for you to stay inside. So with Saturn and Neptune returning to the zodiac sign of Pisces, this may feel confining and dispiriting, as we head into the end of the year and the beginning of next year. But at the same time, you may also come to realize that the before you, and, I want you to sort of think of a before and after picture. The before you is the you of the last 2.5 years, just doesn't feel like you anymore, that you might really like the after you more, and that this is something that you have to sort of wrap your mind around and get used to. Gemini. Gemini learns by comparing and contrasting, before and after, this and that. This is what you naturally do, that if you can compare and contrast, then you can find what it is that you really identify with or what you really feel is the right way to go. Another interesting thing that you may have come to realize with Uranus's brief stint in your zodiac sign, it leaves your sign in November. The other thing that you might have come to realize is that too much freedom might not be something that you're really all that comfortable with, okay? Or doing things on your own, or doing things your own way. You might not be as comfortable as you thought you would be comfortable by embracing that kind of mindset. And that's because as a Gemini, I talked about comparing and contrasting. As a Gemini, you also benefit from sounding boards in your life. For you benefit from having people to bounce ideas off of, whether that's a friend or a foe. If it's a friend, it's someone who, you throw out this idea and the friend is like, oh, that's great. Well, what about this? And they throw it back at you and they're like, no, or maybe yeah, or whatever. And you throw it on back. It's kind of like a volley in tennis with a friend. Or with a foe, it can be someone who doesn't really have anything invested in you feeling good about yourself. And so they're more likely to sort of tell you the truth that maybe your friends and supporters are trying to sort of gloss over or paper over the cracks, And so a foe kind of becomes as important as a friend, because where a friend might soften things because they don't want your feelings to be hurt, foe is just kind of like tell you, how it is and the way that they see it. It may be more negative than is realistic because a foe or a rival has something invested in really, messing you up mentally. But there's a truth to what they're saying. And there's the plus to touching base with someone who knows you better than you may know yourself, which might be an old friend. And there may be a plus with touching base with someone who has no problem telling the things that you don't want to hear, but perhaps need to hear. And so these are the things that can also help orient you. So as you sort of have this huddle with your friends and your foes between now and late January and early February, as you go back and forth and get these different ideas and opinions and perspectives, and you're going to feel like, oh, this person's right one day or that person's right the other day. As you go back and forth with that and you have enough time to do all of that, the lovely thing about water and earth energy is that it absorbs energy. It's like rain falls down to the earth and it's absorbed, and this is what causes things to sprout through the soil and to grow. And as you absorb and take these things in, the new ideas that are being generated or the things that are true, but you weren't really in the mood to accept as being true, as you take these things in, you're going to be in a wonderful position to sort of move forward again when Uranus enters your zodiac sign again on April 26th, 2026. If you're born under Cancer or you have Cancer rising, this period of time when Saturn returns to the zodiac sign of Pisces and when Neptune follows Saturn back into the zodiac sign of Pisces, this is going to be wonderful. This is going to be great. This is going to be terrific. It's going to be like taking a splash in the pool or soaking in your favorite bathtub. It's going to be so wonderful because we have all of this water energy that's going to be coursing through your horoscope. Right now, we have Jupiter traveling through the zodiac sign of Cancer, and that already makes a very strong water statement in your chart. But when we bring Saturn and Neptune back into Pisces, we also set up a trine, and that is very powerful, and that is very good, and that is very restorative, and that is very replenishing. In fact, you probably haven't felt this emotionally safe and this creatively fulfilled in months, if not even perhaps years. So this is a time when you want to be setting down your roots, when you want to be sinking your roots down into rich and deep soil. It's about refreshing bonds with the people you like in your life. That might be family members, that might be friends, that might be neighbors, people that you really feel that you bond with. So this is about refreshing those bonds that you have with the people in your life. And after having had Saturn and Neptune in Aries squaring your zodiac sign, Cancer, for the past few months, this is also a period of time for jettisoning, getting rid of the people in your life that you think are toxic and aren't worth your trouble. This is something that Cancers have a hard time doing because you always feel like you need to hold the people in your life close to you, whether they're bringing good or bad things. But having gone through this recent square, and then with Saturn and Neptune's return back to the zodiac sign of Pisces, you can be like, now, this person might have meant well, but they were actually really nasty, or they didn't do well, or they were like actually really mean. And I'm tired of being so sympathetic and understanding and all these sorts of things. This person acted horribly. I don't need to have this person in my life. So this is also going to be a period of time when you can get rid of the people that you really have been sort of carrying along, either out of responsibility or guilt because you didn't feel the same way, or something along those lines. This is the time for jettisoning all of that, for getting rid of all of that. Then that's because the next few months, or at least the time between now and late January and early February, this is going to be a restorative time. Okay, this is going to be a time where, as I said, you're bonding with the people that you love, you're enjoying the places that you love, the food that you love, you're just really connecting to your life on a very wholesome and a very profound and deep level. And this is very important these next few months, the idea of being restorative, of drinking up, of filling up on this beautiful emotional energy that's coursing through your horoscope right now. This is very important because the fire and air energy returns to your horoscope, which means that the fire and air energy will be starting to increase again at the end of January and as we go into February. And that means that you'll be on the move again. Now, that could either be physical, like physically on the move, and it might indicate a move or a lot of commuting and a lot of traveling, or it could be on the move in a sense of an emotional or psychological restlessness, a feeling of I have to be doing more and I have to be trying more or applying myself more to situations. Now, this is a good time to remember that you were born under the zodiac sign of the crab, or you have your rising sign in the zodiac sign of the crab, which means that you carry your home with you wherever you go. You're not coral, like in a coral reef, or a barnacle. You don't adhere to one spot. With Saturn and Neptune's retreat back into the zodiac sign of Pisces, that doesn't mean that you're going to retreat from the world and stay retreated from the world. What it means is that you're retreating in order to sort of drink up the water, or you can almost think of it as a fuel up station, something along those lines. This period of time is meant to replenish your reserves and to outfit you for the next leg of your personal journey. For the next couple of years, you're going to be traveling over a lot of air and fire terrain. And that means that you're going to be exercising a different set of mental muscles and a different set of psychic muscles. It's not going to be as watery and it's not going to be as earthy for you. So drink up with that energy. Know that you are carrying it around with you. Crabs have a shell and they live in that, and that you can live in this environment inside of you. And that as long as you are carrying around with you your love and your imagination and your joy in the people that fill your life, then you know that you can take on whatever life has to throw at you and not only endure, but also prosper. If you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, the change of energy that you experienced earlier this year For instance, in March, Neptune entered the zodiac sign of Aries, and in May, Saturn joined Neptune in the zodiac sign of Aries. This brought an influx of fire to your horoscope. And this is probably around the time when you felt like you finally left that tunnel that you've been traveling through for the past few years. That it wasn't just like light at the end of the tunnel, you emerged from the tunnel and into the light. And this is a wonderful thing. The influx of fire energy that took place with Saturn and Neptune entering Aries, followed by Uranus entering the zodiac sign of Gemini. So that also brought an air element into the formula as well. And this would have been very uplifting, this would have been very enlivening, and this would have been very invigorating for you. You would have felt really, really wonderful. But now Saturn has turned retrograde, and Neptune is retrograde, and Uranus is retrograde, and they're retrograding back down into the zodiac signs that they just left. So does that mean a return to the tunnel? Does that mean a return to the money pit? These might be things that are very much on your mind, especially with Saturn having re-entered Pisces on September 1st, and Neptune going to go and join Saturn in Pisces on October 22nd. And finances might very well be something that's uppermost in mind. That's because in your solar horoscope, Pisces is the ruler of your solar 8th house, and the 8th house is the house of sex, death, and other people's money. Now, that probably sounds like an 80s punk rock band to you, but basically what it refers to is the way that the 1st and 7th house and the 2nd and the 8th house are structured in an astrological chart. The 1st house, for instance, which contains the ascendant, is the house of me, myself. And the 7th house, which is the house that is across the horizon from the 1st house, is the house of other. It's the house of partner. Okay, so you have 1st house, which is me, and 7th house, which is opposite the horizon, which is going to represent your partner. So that the 2nd house is my money, okay, because the 2nd house is the house of finances and money. And the 8th house becomes the house of the partner's money. And so when you married, and this was the rule for pretty much a lot of the 2,500 plus years that astrology was around here in the Western world, when you married, you consummated your marriage through sex, and you inherited the partner's money through death, okay? That if the partner passed, then you inherited their estate or their dowry or what have you. So that's the sex, death, and other people's money part of the solar 8th house. And those themes might be very strong themes for you right now. You might be dealing with sexual issues that are a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe it's a pattern that keeps following you around that you want to do something about, or the topic or the issue of death might be coming up around the people that you know. It may be a worry or a concern. And then, of course, there's other people's money. So this feeling of mortality, this feeling of feeling very vulnerable, very mortal, very like I'm not at a time in my life where I was like looking ahead and looking forward. I feel like I'm at a time in my life where everything that I do counts, or it really matters, or it's really on the line. These can be feelings that Saturn returning to the zodiac sign of Pisces can bring up. Feelings that you really sort of had just gotten ahead of or gotten away from, and now you feel like they're coming back up again. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go back to being heavy or feeling melancholic or asking yourself, what's life all about, or anything along those lines. You've had enough of this period of time of Saturn and Neptune being in Aries that now that this energy is coming up again, you know what it's like to be on the other side of that. You know what it's like to have a more empowered or a more active and activated approach to the world. So when this comes up again, it's not about avoiding it or escaping it or out talking it. It's more along the lines of, okay, how do I handle this energy in my life? And again, if there are sexual issues that are coming up, this might be the time when you feel ready to talk about it and ready to maybe even do something about it. Maybe change the way that your relationship patterns in your life, or have a discussion with a lover or partner about these issues and really come to a deeper and a fuller understanding. It's not going to carry that same taboo weight that it carried before, that this is something that might actually be, as you share these apprehensions and anxieties, the person you're talking to might be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're bringing it up. I was feeling those things too. And it doesn't have to mean the end of the relationship. It could mean actually talking about things that you've been sidestepping or not wanting to talk about. And that can be a tremendous relief. The other thing that comes up is, sharing those feelings of mortality or loss or I just feel all of a sudden like, time's running by or whatever. You might find that there are many people in your life who are like, I know what you mean, or I have the same feeling too, or, I've been grappling with that as well. So instead of feeling alone and apart, by actually sharing this with other people, you may be feeling that there's camaraderie, that other people get what you're talking about, that they understand it, that you can be there together, that you understand one another. There's a sympathy, there's an empathy, there's a camaraderie there that's very strong and that you might find very supportive now that it's not a taboo topic anymore, now that it's not something that people sort of like don't bring up. Perhaps they were waiting for you to bring it up in some sort of way. As a Leo, you can have a tendency to put those things to one side because they're not sunny. Your ruling planet is the sun, and so you believe in a very optimistic way of approaching life. You believe on being on and up, but life doesn't go to hell in a handbasket if you're not on or up all the time. And you might find that sharing those periods of time when you don't feel so on or up actually brings you closer to the people in your life. Another issue that you might be very sensitive to right now is feeling beholden to other people. That might be beholden to a boss or a supervisor or a partner or a spouse, maybe even a parent, someone who is in a higher position than you, in which you feel like you might owe this person something emotionally, or you might owe this person something financially. And so you're beholden in a way. You have to do what they say. You have to show them a respect or stay with them longer than you feel like you would have if you had had your freedom and your ability. And so there may be a sort of sober side to this experience that's going on. Being a fire sign, there's a proclivity with all the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, that the grass is always greener on the other side, that I need to be somewhere else. And that's where I really belong, not here, but somewhere other than here. And so what can happen with Saturn returning to this part of your solar horoscope might be a kind of acceptance of where you are. That yes, you might be beholden to someone, you might owe them something emotionally or financially, but you might also not be in a position right now to go it your own or to pay them back. And that maybe this is about acceptance. And that can be a sort of difficult thing. We always want to feel like we have our freedom, that freedom is a prerogative, it's a choice. And as long as we keep standing by that, we keep moving forward. But sometimes we leave situations that we shouldn't have left, or before we were ready to leave a situation. And sometimes accepting that's what our life is right now can be freeing instead of discouraging. One might say, okay, I don't have the money to do something on my own right now, and I have to continue in this situation. Well, instead of feeling gloomy and sad and angry about it, it can be like, okay, that's where I am right now. I don't have the finances to go my own way. So what about this situation can I work with? What about this situation is tolerable? And you might find that you move from tolerable to accepting where you are, that maybe the situation right now allows you to save the money or to set yourself up for success in the future. But now might not really be the time to act on it quite yet. But during this period of time, you're going to be looking at money that's going out and money that's coming in. And this idea of other people's money, which lends itself to the notion of debt. The eighth house also covers debt. It's not just the debts or the money that you owe other people, but the money that other people owe you. And so with Saturn here, especially when it's going to be sextiling Uranus and Taurus at the top of your chart, and that begins in November and carries on over into late January, early February of next year, This is going to be a period of time where you sit with people who owe you and you ask them to pay you back. And it's more than just ask them. You sit with them and maybe make out a plan or a schedule of when they can pay you back and how much and what's a reasonable thing. And you might find that they're very cooperative, that they've been wanting to pay you back, that they felt overwhelmed by the amount or never, and sometimes when you sit down and work out deadlines and installments, what becomes overwhelming all of a sudden becomes very manageable. And so this would be a really good time to do that. And it's also a good time for you to be paying what you owe. We always think that we don't have the money to do that. But if you look over things, you may find that you actually do. And that, as long as you are owing someone money, you're beholden to them. So when you pay what you owe, again, even if it's in installments, it's going to make you feel more self-sufficient. It's going to make you feel more independent rather than dependent. And so these are things to really focus on, especially that November 11th to the end of January, early February period with that sextile to Uranus, because Uranus goes from a planet that's always changing the rules or moving the field posts. When it's sextiling planets of equal weight or heft, like a Saturn and a Neptune, all of a sudden there's enlightenment, there's revelation. You could see how you could make a situation work. And with Uranus and Taurus, it's always about how do you make this work? And so with that sextile, again, it's November 7th to late January, early February, you can make that work. You can start paying back these things, honoring these debts. And the more that you do that, the more that it says that the money in the bank that you have is the money that belongs to you, that you get to say, that's my money in the bank and not money that I owe to someone else. And the last thing that I want to share with you is January 20th. On January 20th of 2026, that's when Saturn in Pisces forms a sextile to Uranus and Taurus at the top of your solar horoscope. And that is when something that was kept from you is released to you. So that takes place on January 20th, and it's definitely a day to mark down in your calendar. If you're born under Virgo, or you have Virgo rising, Saturn and Neptune returning to the zodiac sign of Pisces is going to be a bit of a struggle for you. Now, you've been dealing with the issue of a relationship for pretty much the last 2.5 years. Actually, I could make an argument for several years, but things came to a head in the last 2.5 years. And you were kind of going back and forth about whether you might have wanted to stay in a relationship or leave a relationship, and it was really pulling and tugging at you. And it looks like you resolved that to a degree over the summer. But now that Saturn and Neptune are both returning back to the zodiac sign of Pisces, Saturn returned to Pisces on September 1st, and Neptune returns to Pisces on October 22nd. Once again, and this is because you're a Mercury-ruled sign, you're going to be questioning whether this was the right way to go. And my feeling is that if you're still talking to someone, either because you're connected through marriage, or you're connected through love, or you're connected through business, or you're involved in some sort of project together, if you're still talking to this person, you're still together, and that's still very much a bond. And if that's still what's going on right now, then it looks like this is the way it's going to be from now on. If this relationship or association survived the eclipses that you just experienced, then it's pretty much here to stay. And what you sort of need to move towards here is accepting where you are vis-a-vis this other person. And that doesn't mean surrendering or resigning yourself to. It means if this person is still in your life in whatever capacity, you need to accept that this person is a part of your life right now and kind of to stop picking at the scab. The question has been resolved. This person is still a part of your life. And so, well, basically what the stars are kind of telling you is kind of have to get over yourself. I mean, if there's a part of you that's like, did I make the right decision, or I had to make this, or I felt whatever, you made a decision and you need to take ownership of it. You need to take responsibility for it. And oppositions, when planets are opposing you, like Saturn and Neptune, there's always this feeling that there's this wide gulf between you and another person, okay? When oppositions take place and you have retired to your opposite corners, you need to sort of find a way following that to bridge the gap. Typically, oppositions can't be bridged, and that's why they're such a weak point, that when you have transits over an opposition in your own chart, that might be when you reach a breaking point with a situation. And that's where you were for the last definitely year and a half. Right now, the planets are moving into an opposition, so it's raising those old questions, doubts, anxieties, and issues. But you have Uranus returning to the zodiac sign of Taurus on November 7th, all right? And that's going to set up a sextile energy between the Saturn and the Neptune and Uranus in Taurus. That begins on November 7th. And that sextile energy redirects that opposition energy. An opposition, a pure opposition, without the benefit of a sextile or a trine, is polarized. The two people have retreated to their opposite corners and they're not talking to one another. You introduce a sextile and they're talking to one another. The energy is flowing again. And this is a sustained sextile. This sextile really lasts until late January or early February. So this would be a good period to actively look for settling your differences. Settling your differences doesn't mean like saying everything's fine and okay, but it also doesn't mean that you get to just hold on to them and let that obstruct or block the energy. You have to find a way to move past whatever the grievances or the difficulties are or were. In other words, what's being asked of you from this November period to the late January, early February period is tear up the scorecard, all right? We all can tend to keep scorecards, especially in relationships where like, you said this, you said that, you always get your way. You always find a way to sort of manipulate the circumstances to make me feel bad about it, or you shut me up, or you shut me out, or, okay, we keep these scorecards as if like they're going to be tallied up one day and the other person is going to like say, oh my goodness, you're right. Well, that never happens because the other person's keeping a scorecard too. I mean, it'd be great if you and the person that you're in a relationship with can get together, write out your scorecards and tear them up and throw them on the fire together and say, that's it. But at least you can do that psychologically. At least you can do that emotionally. You both have decided to make this association work. And with Uranus and Taurus, which is sextiling the Saturn and the Neptune, the key word here is work, finding a way to make things work. And oftentimes when you find a way to make something work, it's not about having solved a problem and that becomes a static solution. It's finding a way to make things work. And by working together, that brings you closer, or at least puts you in a better positive attitude or frame of mind with one another. And this is the opportunity that the planets are really presenting to you to tear up the scorecard, to get rid of going back to that list of grievances and transgressions and trespasses, because they're not going to be made up for. All right. So there's no point in bringing them back again and again. But when you tear up that scorecard and you commit yourself to working with the other person to improve the relationship or to improve the association, working with the other person to give one another your separate time or your alone time, working with the other person insofar as you don't have to win the argument or make them exceed to the point that you're making, that there can be spaces in your togetherness that you can have disagreements and that doesn't destroy what the two of you have together. This is something that's going to become more of a sensibility, something that's going to become more doable and more appealing in the months to come. So if you embrace that spirit, you may see a relationship or an association that you felt like you had to renew out of a sense of responsibility or obligation, making the transition from an obligation or something that you have to do to something that you want to do, to something that you freely choose for yourself with both your mind and your heart. If you're born under Libra, or you have Libra rising, this return to the zodiac sign of Pisces by Saturn and Neptune, followed by Uranus returning to the zodiac sign of Taurus, is going to be a bit of a sobering moment for you. Now remember, Saturn returns to Pisces on September 1st, and it will be joined by Neptune returning to Pisces on October 22nd. And this might be a time when you're asking yourself, did I go too far? And that's a worthwhile concern, especially when you remember that Neptune entered the zodiac sign of Aries in March, and it was joined by Saturn entering the zodiac sign of Aries in May. This meant that there was a lot of fire energy that was coursing through your horoscope. And whenever you mix fire and air together, remember that Libra is an air sign, whenever you mix fire and air together, it becomes an accelerant. The energy becomes very aggressive, it becomes very initiative, it becomes very expressive. And the more and more Aries energy that's coursing through your horoscope, the more impassioned you would have become. This would have been aided and abetted by Uranus entering the zodiac sign of Gemini in July. And with Uranus entering the zodiac sign of Gemini in July, it was acting to fan the fire into an open and burning flame. And again, you would have liked that. You're an air sign. You would have felt very, I'm being true to myself, and I'm really saying the things that I've been wanting to say for a long time. And I'm really getting people's attention and making them think of me in a different way. I mean, part of you would have really enjoyed that. I mean, it's kind of Libra untethered, and Libra free to express itself. But remember that you were born under the zodiac sign of the scales. You were born under the zodiac sign of the balance. And so Libras, for all their balance, can go through periods of time when they are unbalanced, okay? And where maybe it's gone too far. And so this might have resulted recently in the other person. And what I mean by other person is maybe the other party. Maybe it's the other person in a discussion, or the other person in a negotiation, or maybe it's a partner or an associate or an ally. This might have resulted in the other person hopping off the seesaw. Okay, remember that you need two people on a seesaw, it goes up and down on both sides. And when the other person hops off the seesaw, the person left on the seesaw goes crashing down onto their bottom. So the result may very well be that you're feeling a bit bewildered nowadays. You're feeling a bit puzzled. Why is it that other people get to express themselves and be angry or take the initiative, and go after the things that they want? And meanwhile, I have to be polite about it. I have to be kind. I have to not speak my mind. And I have to be fair and balanced all the time. And maybe I don't feel like being fair and balanced right now. And that's okay. You don't have to feel like you have to be fair and balanced right now. But there are going to be consequences, like there are consequences to anything. And this is what the Saturn and Neptune return to Pisces, followed by Uranus returning to Taurus in November. This is what these planets in these signs are all about. They're reminding you that there are consequences for every sort of action that you take. Now, as a Libra, you know that full well. This is the root of why it is such a difficult time that you go through in making up your mind or making a decision, because you're always trying to figure out what the consequences to that decision are going to be. And you've enjoyed maybe over the past few weeks and months, acting with no care for the consequences and really enjoying it. It's kind of like a shopping spree, where you go to your favorite store, or maybe you go to your favorite stores, and you buy all sorts of things. You buy furnishings, you buy clothes, you buy shoes, you buy things that you've always longed for, and now you're just going to treat yourself to all of this. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's great to sort of let loose like that. But at some point, you're going to get the bill. And at some point, you're going to have to pay it. And that same thing applies to expressing yourself or saying things. That it has an impact on other people. And there are going to be consequences to what has been said or information that has been shared. So with Saturn and Neptune back in Pisces and Uranus back in Taurus, you're going to have to face the music. You're going to have to face the consequences. Now, that doesn't mean slinking back down to your corner or going back to being in some sort of beholden position or editing yourself or making yourself being nice or anything along those lines. You don't have to be subservient again, but you do have to be balanced. In other words, as I said before, you were born under the zodiac sign of the scale, so being balanced is important to you. It's perfectly natural for you to be concerned about what the other person feels. It's perfectly natural for you to ask if the other person thinks that what's being said or done is fair or not. So this is going to be about checking in with someone else, knowing full well that you were perhaps a little bit out of balance before, but also doing it in a way that isn't like, I was expressing myself and I get to. Not like that, but these are the things I was feeling. These were the things that I was expressing. I was angry, or I was upset, or I was dissatisfied. It's about being honest about your feelings, being honest about why you did the things that you did, and being open to hear what the other person has to say about it. Now, the other person might be angry at you, and so you have to sort of sit through that. Or the other person might, leave the room and withdraw for a while, and then you let them go and do that as well. But at some point, there's going to be a conversation. At some point, there's going to be some kind of making of amends. You are all about relationships, and what you bring to a situation is a relationship, something that people really do value. And okay, maybe you kind of became a little bit of an Aries over the past few weeks or something along those lines. You get to, but the idea of you get to also means you also have to accept the responsibility for it or the consequences of that. Be open to the conversation. Be open to hear what the other person has to say and do a back and forth. As a Libra, by the nature of your zodiac sign, you want to know what the other person thinks and you want to know what the other person feels. In the past, that was sometimes done to the detriment of you. You can bring yourself into the equation right now. You can be true to who you are. You're a Libra. You're a person and you also believe in being balanced, but you can express yourself in the way that you want to express yourself. But that means that the other person gets to express themselves in the way they want to express themselves. And then you see if you have a fit or not. You see if you're having a conversation or not. So this isn't turning your back on Mr. Toad's wild ride adventure that you had of the past few weeks. It's saying, I want to be true to who I am, but that doesn't have to mean domineering someone else or, going and do something that you want to do and not caring what the other person thinks or something like that. You can come to a stop here and you can meet the other person and you can be welcoming of your relationship and welcoming of the conversation. And if you do this, you can find that you can be true to yourself, like the other person can be true to themselves as well. And you will find by the end of January or early February of next year that this person returns to the seesaw and you can pick up right from where you left off. If you're born under Scorpio or you have Scorpio rising, Saturn and Neptune returning to the zodiac sign of Pisces is going to be a wonderful period of time for you. Not only because they're returning to Pisces, which is a water sign just like you're a water sign, but they will also be forming a trine to Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Cancer. Cancer is a water sign just like you are a water sign as well. So to have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces forming a trine by sign to Jupiter in Cancer, which both form a trine by sign to you, Scorpio, that creates a loose but nevertheless very real grand trine in water energy. And that grand trine in water energy will be ruling over your horoscope until late January or early February of next year. So what does this mean? This means an infusion of water energy into your love life and into your creativity. This is going to be a period of time in which emotionally you're going to feel like things are really going in your direction. You're going to be feeling very creative, so you sit down and you do something creative and you're going to like what you see. And other people are going to like what you have indeed created. You're going to be feeling very present in your relationships. Instead of being the person that people turn to in a crisis or when they're going through a trauma and turning to you, for your advice when they're going through dark times and then leaving you as soon as they get to the other side of those dark times. During this period of time, you're going to feel very present, very recognized, and very seen, where you will feel cherished by friends and loved by your lover or spouse, and really appreciated by colleagues and neighbors and the people that you have contact with every day. In many ways, you're going to be living life more as a Cancer than a Scorpio. Okay. And the reason why I say that is really because the Jupiter in Cancer is going to be a prominent planetary energy here for you in your own horoscope. Cancer has a more optimistic view of love than Scorpios tend to do. And that comes from Cancer being associated with the summer, which is the season of abundance, and with growth and with prosperity. Cancer's association to hearth and home and to children. Cancer has this bonding energy that's very powerful and that's very deep and that's very profound. Scorpio also has a bonding energy, but it has a tendency to be based more on the pains or the difficulties that you've gone through and that someone that you know has gone through. And that can often become the thing that brings the two of you together. And that can keep you at times from expressing the gentler side of love, the more trusting side of love, the more faith-driven side of love. Scorpios don't want to be mistrustful all the time. They don't want to be suspicious all the time. They don't want to be the person who, when someone plays the tiles in Scrabble using a blank tile and they make this tremendous score, they don't want to always be the person who has to flip that blank tile over to make sure that it's blank, something that Scorpios will do. Scorpios want to trust. They want to believe. They want to love openly and foolishly. And it's because of that fear of rejection or that fear that they love too powerfully that they can sometimes hide that under a real rough exterior, or they can hide it with a biting remark or a suspicious glance or a skeptical attitude. During this period of time, you're going to be feeling so much water energy flowing forward in your horoscope and subsequently into your life that you're not going to worry so much about whether that blank tile was really blank or not. You're not going to worry so much about the things that weren't said or the remark that was uttered under someone's breath. You are coming from a place of emotional strength, from emotional centeredness. You are coming from your own wellspring. And this water energy is so powerful and it's so strong that even if someone lets you down or if someone disappoints you, you're not going to go into a dark hole about it. You're just going to be like, oh, okay. I mean, it's literally going to roll off your back like water rolls off the back of a duck. It's not going to be a big thing. It's not going to derail you. So not only is there going to be this sense of really being strong in who you are and fulfilled in who you are and loving in who you are, but there's going to be an openness to the love that other people have to give you. You're not going to glance at them, suspiciously. You're going to receive that love and you're going to feel robust as a result of that. So much so that, as I said, disappointments and rejections aren't going to derail you like before. So is this energy going to stay with you? Is it something that you're just experiencing between now and late January, early February? The answer is yes. This energy is going to stay with you. You don't have to always be the angry Scorpio. You can be the loving Scorpio and the supportive Scorpio. And those are parts of who you are and parts of who you are that are going to be coming out right now. And as this comes out more and more, and you really give way to it, you can't really stop it if you tried, but if you sort of like give way to it, this is going to change the way that people look at you. They're going to see a fullness to you. They're going to see an abundance to you, a warmth to you. You're kind of like a piece of ripe fruit. Now, I know that sounds a little odd, like a piece of ripe fruit, but, like when you bite into a peach, there's that flavor, there's that juice, there's that, this is the best peach in the world. People are going to see you in that way. They're going to see you in that regard. And this is something that you're going to absolutely adore. Now, the temperament of the planets are going to change. Once we get into spring of next year, we'll have fire and air energy coursing through your horoscope again. So what this means during this period of time from now until late January to early February is I want you to drink in the water. I want you to take in this water energy because you're going to be carrying it. okay? When that temperament changes and we become air and fire again, you're going to be carrying this water here inside of you. And what that means is that you're not rationing it. What it means is that it exists within who you are. You don't have to feel less again. You don't have to feel rejected again. You don't have to feel thrown out again. You can be confident in your emotional life because you're comfortable in your own skin. And this is the wonderful transformation that Saturn and Neptune returning to Pisces and Uranus returning to the zodiac sign of Taurus will bring for you. If you're born under Sagittarius or you have Sagittarius rising, this period of time when Saturn and Neptune return to the zodiac sign of Pisces, followed by Uranus leaving Gemini and returning to the zodiac sign of Taurus in November, this period of time is going to be a little bit of a challenge for you. It reminds me a lot of when my mom would start calling me and my brothers to come back home for dinner. We would be out playing hide and go seek with the neighborhood kids. We would have found these great places to hide and things like that. And we're having a great old time of it. And the sun had set and it was making it even more like fun, to hide or whatever. And then inevitably at some point, my mom would be like, boys, everyone come home, dinner's on the table. And I'd be like, I'd be like, dinner's on the table and it's getting cold. Come on, come home right now, And yes, I had one of those childhoods and we'd be like, groan and be like, see you tomorrow, Ken. Okay, Bill. We'd like come back and have to like wash our hands and face, and we'd have to wash our hands and face for dinner. Well, this is essentially what Saturn and Neptune returning to Pisces is going to feel like for you. You're out there having a lot of fun, and you have been feeling very like exhilarated, very animated since Neptune entered the zodiac sign of Aries in March and Saturn entered the zodiac sign of Aries in May. The Aries is a fire sign, just like Sagittarius is a fire sign. So that's a trining energy that's going to pump up the volume on all of that heat and fire and passion and excitement and enthusiasm. And that fire is going to be fanned into a flame with Uranus entering Gemini, having aided and embedded that energy last July. So you would have felt like you were on a real roll, like you were going places, like you're out and about and you're expressing who you are and you're doing the things that you want to do, that you're having a great time playing with your friends and colleagues and getting places. And now it's like, time to come home for dinner, but you have to wash your hands and face first. With Saturn and Neptune saying, well, it's time for you to answer a family obligation. It's time for you to come home for a while and to take care of business. And you might be like, oh, shucks, I have to go on home, And the thing is, you do. Okay, with Saturn and Neptune re-entering the zodiac sign of Pisces and Uranus, as I said, joining them in a sextile in Taurus, from now until the end of January or early February, you have obligations to fulfill and responsibilities to carry and to answer for. Chances are these have to deal with your family, but even if they don't have to deal with your family per se, it could be your family of friends or your community in some way, you're going to feel like you're being put back into a subservient position. You're being put back into a subservient position that you had just left and you wanted to be far away from. Nevertheless, you have to answer this obligation. That's what Saturn is all about. And when Saturn is in Pisces, it forms a square to your own zodiac sign, Sagittarius. And so you have to answer that. There's no choice. You don't get to evade or get away from it. And even though your imagination might be coming up with all these ideas of what you could do, or you may really be feeling the impulse to purchase a plane ticket going anywhere but where you're supposed to be going, I would strongly advise you and encourage you to fulfill these responsibilities and to see to these obligations. I would encourage you to answer this call, most of all because it's the right thing to do, and secondly, because you would feel really bad and miserable if you didn't. Now, you may be putting yourself under the thumb of a domineering parent or a bullying sibling or something along those lines, and you may have to fetch things for them or get things for them in this, as I said, subservient position. But as you embrace these tasks, as you do these things that you really don't want to do, you may find that you've actually grown as a person, that you're kinder than you used to be, that you're more reliable than you used to be, more patient. So that instead of escaping or getting away from something that you don't want to do, that in the embracing of this obligation, you may find that it makes you a better person. And not just because it's the right thing to do, but in the doing of it, you feel like a better person. And this may change the relationship you have with that domineering parent, or it may change the relationship you have with that bullying sibling. Remember that Sagittarius is all about embracing its higher purpose. I mean, for a Sagittarius or a Sagittarius rising, connecting to your higher purpose is a very sacred and a very powerful experience. So you may find that the next time that you go looking for your higher purpose, you don't have to look any further than your own backyard. If you're born under Capricorn, or you have Capricorn rising, you might have felt a little bit sideswiped this year. That's because in March, Neptune entered the zodiac sign of Aries, followed by Saturn, your planetary ruler, entering the zodiac sign of Aries in May. When these two planets entered the zodiac sign of Aries, they formed a square to your own zodiac sign of Capricorn. So you would have felt at odds against yourself, that the things that you expected to move smoothly stopped moving smoothly, and the things that you expected to be easy wins became long and laborious affairs. You might have felt like you were on slippery ground, like you couldn't get your bearings, and that things weren't working in the way that you wanted them to work. These might have been things coming from you out of your personal life, out of your day-to-day circumstances, things that thwarted your best efforts to stay on schedule or to get things done. And you may have found yourself forced to deal with them. And in dealing with them, they were overburdening you. They were slowing you down. And that's because when Saturn enters the zodiac sign of Aries, there can be this feeling that the start isn't starting. It's not beginning. You're at the starting gate and you're ready to run forward. You know, the gun goes off and you're the one who trips over your shoelaces while everyone races ahead. So you lose your lead. You lose what you had as a head start. And that might have been a feeling that you kept encountering over and over again this year, that you had been derailed, that you were off your game, and that the harder you tried to get things back on your game, the more and more off your game that things became. What's going to be nice about Saturn and Neptune leaving Aries and retrograding back down into Pisces, followed by Uranus leaving Gemini and retrograding back down into the zodiac sign of Taurus, what's going to be nice is that you're going to feel like you've got your groove again, okay? That where things were thwarting you or getting in your way and you were just sort of like, what else can go wrong? And then you started saying to yourself, stop asking yourself what else can go wrong, because you don't want to give fate any ideas of like, let's throw something else in the Capricorn's way to make things go wrong, okay? You know, there was so much frustration, you know, that was going on. Feeling back in the groove again, it feels like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm working with the current of events rather than against the current of events. I feel like things are heading in my direction again. But what this square might also have brought up in you is your attitudes about being thwarted, your attitudes towards facing obstacles in your path. Are you a Capricorn in the regard that you're going to power through no matter what? You know, Capricorn and Aries are both signs that will power through. Aries powers through by butting heads, and Capricorn powers through by climbing up and over whatever is getting in the way. So now that you feel like things are heading in your direction, as I said before, you have an opportunity to re-examine your attitudes. You know, is it such a good idea to push yourself, to get angry at yourself and frustrated with yourself and blame yourself if things don't go your way? This return to the comforting waters of Pisces that Saturn and Neptune are making, and this return to the very practical approach to life that Uranus is making by returning to the zodiac sign of Taurus, these can come together in your consciousness to get you to look at different alternatives, to consider different options. The first one might be, what's wrong with letting things fall apart if they're going to fall apart? If you're forcing a fit, if you're forcing yourself to work harder and it's costing you in some sort of regard, either financially or obligations at home or your health or, your peace of mind, maybe pushing yourself hard isn't the best way to get things done. That might not be the best way of accomplishing your ends, especially if things only get worse or push back the more you try to push to get your way. Or that throwing up your hands and saying, I give up, isn't the best way to approach something either, because it unplugs you from your creativity and from your ingenuity. There's nothing wrong with stumbling. There's nothing wrong with not being able to keep up in the way that you think you should keep up. If someone is in need, if someone needs your help, that might be a bigger priority than keeping yourself on that schedule that you insist that you keep yourself on. And sometimes when we leave the beaten track, sometimes when we answer a call or we're not able to fulfill an obligation because we have to do something else, sometimes we discover other things that are as important, if not more important. Sometimes we discover other ways of handling a situation. Acceptance doesn't have to mean surrender, and surrender is fighting words to a Capricorn, okay? Acceptance that you are doing your best and that's all you can do can be a very liberating thing. And accepting that you're frustrated and angry doesn't mean you have to pull the plug and leave all the hard work that you've done. You can give into a feeling of frustration. You can give into a feeling of surrender. You can let yourself experience those emotions. And then when you're done experiencing those emotions, you can come back and face the task again. And chances are, when you sort of give yourself time away from the grindstone that you're pressing your nose against, and you come back to it, you can see that a situation that felt impossible before is infinitely manageable. What this is talking about is really a change in your outlook and in a change in your insistence on things, on the way that things are done. You're not a big fan of the go with the flow energy that Saturn and Neptune back in Pisces is going to encourage, but they will be forming a sextile to Uranus in Taurus, and Taurus is an earth sign just like you. Uranus is always unconventional, but Uranus in Taurus means finding a way to turn the unconventional into something that's applicable. In other words, adopting an unconventional approach or an unconventional method and finding a practical way to apply it. If you combine those energies and you follow the direction that they're heading in, you will find that when this sextile comes to its completion at the end of January or in early February, you will find that you've made a tremendous amount of gains for much less pain. If you're born under Aquarius or you have Aquarius rising, 2025 has been a wonderful year for you. That's because Saturn entered the zodiac sign of Aries in May, and Uranus entered the zodiac sign of Gemini in July. Saturn and Uranus are both of your planetary rulers. You're one of the few zodiac signs who has two planet rulers, and those are Saturn and Uranus. Usually, Saturn and Uranus are contentious. They have a bit of an adversarial relationship based on the fact that Saturn overthrew his father in Greek mythology before taking rulership over the heavens. But here they were forming a sextile in air and fire signs, and a sextile is always a good thing. It takes the best qualities of both these signs that share a similar temperament by element, and it heightens it. So you would have felt very exuberant, you would have felt like you were going places, you would have felt very excited about the direction that your life is taking, and you would have felt a real uptick in energy. It is the nature of air and fire when they mix as elements to accelerate. And this can be wonderful. It can be a wonderful experience of being animated, excited, and like you're really going places and like you're cooking with gas. Well, Saturn turned retrograde in Aries, and Uranus also turned retrograde in Gemini. And on September 1st, Saturn retrograded back down to the zodiac sign of Pisces. And on November 7th, Uranus will retrograde back down into the zodiac sign of Taurus. And so that's going to describe this sluggish feeling that you're experiencing, that what felt very swift and fast and light on your feet is now becoming slow, sluggish, that you're moving through mud rather than speeding through air, and that maybe you're even losing the ground that you had overtaken. And with this can maybe come a drop in energy, a drop in confidence, and you wondering whether you're going to ever experience that feeling again. Whenever planets turn retrograde, it's best just to let them turn retrograde. In other words, don't fight the current. If the current is moving back the way you came, don't try to fight it. Go along with it and see what the planets have to say. And so with Saturn returning to Pisces and Uranus returning to Taurus, what they're going to perhaps show you are some things that you overlooked in your zeal or in your haste to get ahead. They might be certain financial matters, or they might be certain health matters that you looked past. You didn't think it was a big deal. You didn't give them the proper respect or importance that they needed to have. Maybe you handled a financial situation too speedily, too quickly, without thinking. Or maybe you made certain assumptions of your capacity to do something, that you had the willpower and you had the energy to get through things, and you took on more and more responsibilities and obligations and tasks. And now you feel like they weigh too heavy on you. And you may even be wondering if you can even get them done. It's kind of like that adage: if you find yourself painting yourself into a corner, then stop painting. All right. And that would be an idea to keep in mind during this period of time that they're retrograde. But I think that if you can go back over the ground that you covered and take a look at it with a fresh perspective, I do want to get ahead, and I do want to progress with a certain enterprise or a certain venture, but I have to take care of these things first. Instead of saying, I'm going to take care of it later, which can sometimes be an Aquarian penchant, what you want to do is take care of it now. Or actually, what the planets are telling you is there is no later. You have to take care of it now. You may find that there are certain loose ends that need to be tied up. You may find that there are certain things that were a patch job for a long period of time, but now need you to take much more seriously. You may find like temporary fixes have outstayed their welcome, and that things are starting to unravel or fall apart again. So you really want to take a more fundamental look at certain concerns in your life around finances and maybe even around home or property. Definitely around the way that you live your life, foundationally speaking, or more simply put, health and wealth. You want to take a more serious approach about that, and you want to examine it more fundamentally. And you want to do the things that the planets are requiring you to do. That might be meeting with someone over your financial situation. That might be meeting with someone over a health matter, something along those lines. And that if you do it now, you're doing it in a timely manner. You're doing it before it becomes what could potentially be a bigger problem. You're sort of nipping it in the bud right now. So this isn't just about taking care of things and then you can go back to the progress that you were making. It's more about taking care of things that have needed your time and attention for a very long time so that they don't catch you up later. That if you take care of these fundamental matters or issues right now, then not only can you go back to that progressive feeling you were experiencing in the spring, but you're actually going to go further and last longer than you would have before. So basically, you're sort of going back in order to go forward, but you'll find that by taking care of these things right now, that A, you've taken care of them, and B, you can really go further than you would have gone before on your own steam. If you're born under Pisces, or you have Pisces rising, this period of time when Saturn returns to Pisces, which was on September 1st, followed by Neptune returning to Pisces on October 22nd, this is going to set up a wonderful period of time for you. With Saturn and Neptune back in Pisces, they will be forming a natural trine to Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Cancer. And that's a good thing. Jupiter is exalted, meaning most celebrated in the zodiac sign of Cancer, and the reason why that's so important to you is twofold. Jupiter is one of your two ruling planets, and it's exalted in the zodiac sign of Cancer, and Cancer is a water sign just like you. That means you're getting all the benefits of that watery energy, and that's always good news for you. That's going to fill you full of creativity, that's going to give you emotional security within yourself, and that's going to make you feel really confident in who you are. And it's going to make you feel like you're surrounded by very loving and supportive people. People who don't even know you that well are going to be very supportive and very encouraging and very much wanting to help you with anything that you face right now. So this very powerful trine in water that's taking place is going to be a wonderfully benevolent thing for you. This is good news, especially following Uranus having entered the zodiac sign of Gemini in July. This is a period of time when you were thrown for a loop, when something occurred in your life that might have taken you by surprise, that you really didn't see it coming. It was some sort of rude awakening. And when you felt like you had to scramble to find solid ground again. With this water energy reestablishing itself in your horoscope, you're going to feel like you can think clearly again, like you can really visualize in order to realize the things that you truly want to have in your life. That idea is going to be expanded upon when Uranus returns to the zodiac sign of Taurus on November 7th. That's when Uranus and Taurus will be forming a sextile to Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. Whenever you combine the elements of water and earth together, this is a growth element. It comes from the simple fact that you can plant a seed in the soil, you can water it, and it grows into a plant. It blooms as a flower or as a tree. So water and earth together is always a very nurturing, a very nourishing, very much an energy which is all about growing, about seeing things realized. And this is very good for you. And you will be under the influence of these energies until late January or early February of next year. What you're also going to find during this period of time is that you were right all along, okay? And this is a good thing. In other words, where people had made fun of ideas that you had or poo-pooed your feelings or said, you're going off on one of your crazy Pisces tangents again, where people felt like you were too worried or you were too anxious or you were too hopeful or you were too yearning, you're going to see that you were right all along. You were right to be anxious about the things that you were anxious about. You were right to be concerned about the things that you were concerned about. But you were also right to have yearned for something. You were right to have longed for something because you're going to see the fulfillment of your yearnings and your longings. So you're going to go from the person that everyone was kind of like making fun of because you were too naive and foolish or trusting into someone that everyone's listening to and they want to know, how did you get that information? How did you know that that was going to turn out like that? What did you do to see a wish or a dream or an aspiration of yours fulfilled? I want to know. Can you teach me? So this is going to be a wonderful period of time in which you feel very seen and you feel very recognized and you feel very affirmed. And when you feel seen and recognized and affirmed, you sort of open up a bit more. You put more of yourself out there in the world. And so this can also be a very fulfilling period of time for you. If you're working on a creative project, you may make a lot of headway from this period of time from now until late January or early February. If you're involved in a relationship or a burgeoning romance, you may see it flower and come to life during this period of time. You may also see reconciliations with people that you were on the outs with. You may see people who said that they weren't going to talk to you again coming back and talking to you. You may be hearing apologies from people that you never thought you'd ever hear an apology from at all. And this is what happens when the water energy is open and when it streams from sign to sign. And when your two ruling planets, which are Jupiter and Neptune, form a trine to one another. So essentially what's happening here is that you've got Neptune back in your own zodiac sign, and you've got Jupiter in Cancer. So Jupiter in Cancer is moving the Pisces energy over to itself. And so you're going to feel fulfillment in things that are basically Cancer ruled. And Cancer, as we know, is the zodiac sign of hearth and home. So this will be a source of great joy for you and happiness for you. It's also the zodiac sign of property, real estate, housing. So all of those things will go well for you as well. So if you're looking to purchase property or to relocate, or you're looking to set up house and home with someone, this period of time from now until late January and early February is absolutely the time to do it. And so what's going to be a wonderful thing that you're going to experience is, in conjunction with being right all along and everyone recognizing that you were right all along, what you're also going to find is that everything works out for you in the end. All of those predicaments, those dilemmas, they unknot themselves and they come back together in much more manageable ways and in situations that benefit you. There are few times in life when we get to experience things going our way, and that's what's going to be happening to you with your two ruling planets forming a trine to one another. So I want you to feel the joy that brings. I want you to feel the confidence that brings. And I want you to celebrate yourself during this period of time. And that doesn't mean it's all going to go away when we get to the other side of February. What it means is that once you've experienced that confidence and once you've experienced that fulfillment, that becomes something that you can build on. And this becomes something that you could really rely on moving forward into 2026. If you enjoyed what you saw, please press the like button. It helps more than you know. If you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I've had such a wonderful time visiting with you this week, and I can't wait to get together next time on Christopher Renstrom Astrology.